He stood alone in an empty room, phone in hand, the screen unchanged. She had grown distant for days. No more flurries of messages. No more heart emojis. No more midnight, "I miss you." And like many men before him, he thought, maybe it's over. But that was the mistake. The mistake wasn't that she walked away. It was believing that this was the end. From the Stoic perspective, this is not a failure. It is your greatest opportunity to grow, to master yourself, and to become the kind of man who can never be replaced. 1. Distance is not the end. It is a sober reminder. In many relationships, when a woman begins to grow distant, becomes less responsive, or emotionally withdraws, most men panic. They feel anxious, disoriented, and immediately assume the relationship is over. This leads to impulsive behaviors like texting incessantly, calling to explain, trying to fix things, or doing whatever it takes to hold on to her. Yet through the lens of Stoicism, this is not a time for emotional reaction. It is a time to observe, to take a step back, and to reflect inward. Stoicism never teaches us to react immediately to another's shifts. On the contrary, it calls for calm, a calm that is deliberate and trained. When someone's attitude changes, it doesn't necessarily mean they have stopped caring. Sometimes it is merely a transitional phase, a personal response to what's unfolding in their life. And if we treat every shift as a crisis, then it is we who harm our safety selves through misplaced expectations and ungoverned reactions. Distance, seen rightly, is a signal to return to oneself. It compels us to ask, am I living too dependent on someone else's attention and presence? This is a chance to reassess our own emotions, to ask whether we truly love a person or merely crave the feeling of being loved and noticed. If it's the latter, then her distance is not a misfortune, but a sober reminder to free ourselves from that dependency. Moreover, in many cases, women do not pull away because love has faded. They step back to assess. They watch your emotional stability. They want to see whether you are truly grounded or simply trying to sustain attraction by reacting to every fleeting emotion. And the irony is, your response to her distance often determines whether she still sees something worth holding on to. A man of character does not overreact when met with silence. He does not flood her phone with messages, nor call obsessively, nor scheme to win her back. Instead, he remains steady. He does not alter his behavior over a missed reply. He does not lose his sense of worth over a few quiet days. That steadiness becomes the very foundation of renewed attraction, because it proves he is not governed by another's emotions. Stoicism teaches that what lies within our control is our own behavior and attitude, not the feelings or reactions of others. Therefore, instead of trying to control what is beyond reach, return to mastering yourself. A man who truly grasps this will see distance not as collapse, but as a test of his own maturity. She may need time to think. She may be burdened by something unknown to you. But whatever the reason, your clarity and calm in the face of uncertainty is proof that you are strong enough to move forward, with or without her. And the paradox is this: when you stop trying to hold on out of fear, you often give someone a reason to look back. Distance, if you understand and face it rightly, is not a final period. It is a reminder, a test to measure your depth, because a man is truly magnetic, not when everything goes well, but when everything begins to crack, and he remains unshaken, without complaint, without panic, without losing himself. 2. The silent test. If you react, you've already lost. There is a kind of challenge that often appears in relationships, but is rarely spoken aloud. The sudden silence from the other person. She offers no clear reason, no definitive conclusion, and doesn't disappear completely. Instead, she simply withdraws. The messages slow down. Her responses turn cold. The once lively conversations reduce to curt replies. This isn't a formal breakup. It's a silent test. In such moments, most men fall into doubt, anxiety, and confusion. They start questioning what they did wrong. And by instinct, they react. They send more messages, call for answers, try to clarify the relationship, eager to fix the situation as soon as possible. But these very actions unintentionally confirm what she's trying to find out. Are you truly grounded, or merely pretending to be? Her silence isn't mere indifference. In many cases, it's a way of observing. When she goes quiet, she's stepping back, not to leave permanently, but to watch how you respond. And if you lose composure and act emotionally, you've exposed a weakness within. Stoicism teaches us what lies outside our control is no threat. The real danger lies in how we respond. A man who has cultivated inner discipline does not rush to react in moments of quiet. He feels no need to fill the silence with messages, explanations, or pleading. Instead, he holds his ground, meaning he maintains stability, keeps his rhythm, and does not scramble to ease his discomfort, because he knows when you react emotionally, you hand the other person all your power. Women rarely admit they're testing you. They'll never confess that this coldness is a deliberate trial. But the truth is, in many situations, they are watching to see whether you can remain still when everything begins to shake, not because they want you to suffer, but because they want to know, if all emotion were stripped away, would you still stand firm? Impulsive reaction is a mistake many fall into. They feel the urge to do something immediately, but that urge comes from insecurity, not reason. They fear loss, fear abandonment, fear losing control, and from that fear, they act. Yet those very actions erode respect, revealing that you are easily swayed by emotion, vulnerable to the unclear. By contrast, non-reaction, stillness, is the clearest sign of strength, not because you are cold, but because you understand that everything has its timing. If someone needs time to think, give it. If someone withdraws to test, let them see that their absence doesn't unmoor you. Your calm becomes a mirror that compels them to reflect. A truly magnetic man is not shaken by vague signals. He does not rush to conclusions or try to force clarity where time will provide it. He stands still in a posture of readiness, not to chase, but to accept whatever comes without losing himself. The silent test is an essential part of many relationships. It comes without warning, without deadline, and without explanation. But it carries a simple rule. If you react, you've lost. Not lost to them, but to yourself. Lost because you failed to remain in control when it mattered most. 3. Attraction emerges from distance, not constant presence. In the early stages of a relationship, everything unfolds naturally and irresistibly. Novelty, mystery, and the thrill of pursuit draw two people toward each other. But over time, when presence becomes constant, when predictability replaces curiosity, that initial magnetism begins to fade. What many fail to realize is this: uninterrupted presence can erode the very attraction that once sparked the connection. In many relationships, being always available, always replying instantly, always showing up whenever the other person calls, is not necessarily a sign of a deep love. Sometimes it signals dependency and a lack of space needed for emotion to grow. The other person no longer feels the need to pursue you because you're too accessible, too easy to grasp. And by the simple law of human psychology, what is always available rarely feels truly valuable. Lasting attraction doesn't come from constant availability. It comes from your ability to disappear at the right moment. When you know how to withdraw intentionally, you create a void in which the other person can feel your absence. In that space, if their emotions are real, they will begin to miss you. They'll begin to wonder what you are doing, what you are thinking, whether you still care. And those very questions reignite the attraction. Not hasty words or rushed gestures. Stoic philosophy emphasizes that we should not rely on others to feel complete. When you can live independently, step back without anxiety, you radiate a presence that commands respect, not because you're playing aloof, but because you're genuinely at peace, whether someone is in your life or not. That stability allows others to sense the intrinsic value within you, and that is the foundation of lasting attraction. Withdrawing at the right moment should not be mistaken for punishment or emotional manipulation. The goal is not to induce panic or provoke insecurity, but to restore emotional balance within the relationship. When you sense that you are becoming overly present, losing yourself in the pursuit of closeness, stepping back helps you reclaim your center and gives the other person space to rediscover your worth. Constant presence also makes people forget who you are. They see you daily, hear your voice hourly, read your messages every minute. There is no room to miss you, no time to wonder, no space for longing to take shape. And when longing disappears, so does attraction. Meanwhile, distance, if created naturally and mindfully, deepens your presence in the other's mind. Women are often drawn to men who possess their own world, who carry depth and cannot be easily predicted. If you're always showing up, always explaining, always trying to hold her close, you strip away the mystery that fuels attraction. But when you're silent at the right moment, when you withdraw at the right time, you become an enigma, one she is compelled to think about, remember, and compare. And it is in that reflection that attraction is rekindled. Ultimately, distance is not a barrier to affection. It is a tool for testing its truth. If a relationship cannot survive a few days without your presence, perhaps it was never as solid as you believed. But if, after silence and absence, the other person returns to you with clear action, it proves the relationship has a true foundation. And that only happens when you trust this. Timely distance, not constant presence, is what sustains lasting attraction. 4. Silence is not for manipulation, but for restoring inner order. When someone becomes silent in a relationship, the gesture is often misunderstood. The other may interpret the silence as punishment, a tactic to exert psychological pressure, or worse, an attempt at emotional manipulation. Yet, if it comes from inner steadiness and is guided by Stoic principles, silence is not a tool for control, but a path to restore balance, to reestablish inner order. In reality, when a relationship becomes tense, fractured, or clouded by fear and expectation, many fall into uncontrollable actions. They cling, search for explanations, and try to maintain connection at any cost. But in doing so, their inner world unravels. They no longer discern what should be done from what is merely fear-driven. And Stoicism teaches we should never act before the mind is made clear. Silence, in this context, is a conscious retreat. It is the decision to disconnect momentarily, to observe oneself, rather than react emotionally. The one who chooses silence creates a safe space to examine their true motives. They ask, am I acting from love or from fear of being left behind? And only when the answer is honest can they move forward with wisdom. It is essential to understand silence is not the denial of emotion. It doesn't suppress feeling, nor is it avoidance. On the contrary, silence is a tool to return the mind to stillness. When words risk being misunderstood, When haste might escalate conflict, silence allows for a broader view, beyond the narrow lens of fleeting emotion. Stoicism upholds self-mastery and inner freedom. A Stoic does not go silent to control others, because they do not seek power over what lies outside their sphere. They go silent to preserve the only domains they truly command, themselves. And when you remain calm in your most fragile moments, you display a strength no words can express. At the same time, silence becomes an unspoken declaration of self-worth. When you choose not to react, you are not avoiding the issue. You are refusing to be pulled into the storm of ungoverned emotion. You step back not to win, but to protect something greater, your own stability. And often this stillness is what causes the other to pause and reflect. Timely silence can create a space for both to look inward. No more defensive arguments, no more pressure-laden messages. Instead, there is room to ask the essential question: what do I truly want from this relationship? And if the answer is understanding and growth, then silence is not a barrier. It becomes a bridge to deeper connection. Without silence, people get swept into a cycle of constant reaction, losing the ability to hear themselves. But with intentional silence, one can return to the eye of the emotional storm, place their feet on solid ground, and move forward with clarity. In that space, inner order is restored, and only from that clarity can outward action hold true meaning. Thus, silence is not a weapon, not a tactic, and not surrender. It is the mark of one who chooses inner control over unconscious motion. When inner order is reestablished, every decision, whether to stay or walk away, emerges from clarity, untouched by fear or the need to please. 5. If she returns, let actions speak for everything. After a period of distance, when she comes back, many men feel relief, even joy. They see it as a victory, a sign that the hopes they've held on to have finally come true. Yet in a relationship marked by challenge, a return does not always mean real change. And this is the pivotal moment, where composure and observation matter more than emotional impulse. Stoicism teaches us, do not act hastily before the nature of a thing is clear. Therefore, when someone who once walked away returns, your task is not immediate welcome, but measured observation. Words can shift with ease, but actions reveal a person's true nature. If you get swept up in emotion, you may miss the warning signs. But if you remain still, you'll see whether the return is rooted in sincerity or merely another emotional reflex. In this phase, reacting too quickly or too warmly can unintentionally unbalance the relationship. When you display too much emotion, you signal that their return was easily earned. This quietly removes any sense of effort on their part, and the relationship may slide back into the old dynamic, one that once left you hurt. Stoicism urges you to set standards based on behavior, not on regret or apologies. Someone truly serious about returning won't stop at saying they miss you. They will prove it through initiative, through clear commitment, and by actively addressing the causes of past breakdowns. Without concrete behavioral change, the return is just another emotional loop, and likely, the relationship will circle back to its starting point. A person's return should not be seen as a reward or a victory. It should be viewed as a moment of reassessment, where you, from a new position, determine whether you still wish to continue. When you stand firm, without rushing, without inflated expectations, you show them that the relationship cannot move forward without growth from both sides. A common mistake is trusting again too quickly, out of fear of losing once more. But Stoic philosophy reminds us, what has fractured must be thoroughly examined before it is restored, not through promises, but through consistent, tangible actions over time. If the return lacks clear commitment and real change, Opening the door too early may only repeat the old pain. Calmness in this phase does not mean indifference. It is a mark of emotional maturity. When you don't overreact, you're sending a clear message that you have standards, that you will not let emotion override what you know you deserve. If the one who returns truly seeks to rebuild, they will respect that calm. They won't feel rejected. They'll understand that you are valuing the relationship by approaching it not with haste, but with seriousness. And if they can't meet that standard, their departure won't destabilize you, because in every scenario, you've learned to place action above emotion. And that is the sign of someone who has matured in life. 6. If she never comes back, you still win. In romantic relationships, when someone leaves and doesn't return, it's often seen as a failure. Many believe they've lost, that they weren't good enough to make someone stay, that their efforts, love, and time were all in vain. Yet from the Stoic perspective, that departure, even without a return, is not a loss, but a different kind of victory, quiet but profound. Stoicism does not measure self-worth by external outcomes, but by one's ability to govern the inner life. When a person can accept the truth that someone will not return and still remain mentally steady, clear in thought, and disciplined in action, they have achieved what Stoic teaching always aims for: mastery of the self. Another's departure is not a denial of your worth. It may be the result of irreconcilable differences or incompatible needs, or simply emotional changes beyond anyone's control. Her not coming back does not diminish your value, nor erase what you gave. On the contrary, it becomes the moment to prove to yourself that you can stand firm without needing another to hold you up. In Stoic thought, we are taught to distinguish what lies within our control from what does not. Whether someone returns is never within your control. You can live with kindness, act with integrity, maintain a noble attitude, but in the end, their choice remains their own. And when you refuse to let your peace be disturbed by what lies beyond your reach, you are embodying the very spirit of autonomy. Moreover, her not returning clarifies who is truly worthy of walking with you. A relationship cannot continue on the effort of one side alone. If someone chooses to leave and never seeks to return, that exit becomes a natural filter, freeing you from investing emotion, time, and energy into something that no longer serves you. Victory does not always come with reunion. Sometimes, it's the quiet peace that follows a hard decision. When you learn to let others choose freely, without it breaking your inner balance, you pass one of the greatest tests in love, letting go not out of helplessness, but out of self-respect. Only when freed from expectation can you begin to grow fully, no longer pouring your energy into seeking validation from the one who left. You can rebuild your mind, your body, your spirit. Each step forward is no longer fueled by pain, but by the will to live in alignment with your own values. And that recovery, that transformation, is the deepest form of victory, the triumph of maturity. Not everything that ends is a tragedy. A clear end, unclouded without false hope, can become the foundation for a new chapter, a chapter where you no longer chase approval from the outside, but build your life on what you can control: your thoughts, your attitude, your actions. So if she never comes back, it doesn't mean you've lost. It means you've been given the chance to begin again, not to feed someone else, but to become the strongest, most independent, and most free version of yourself. 7. You don't need anyone to be valuable, but the right one will recognize you. In relationships, people often seek validation from others to feel valuable. They believe being loved is proof that they are lovable. Yet this creates dependency. When affection is not returned, Their sense of worth is shaken. But according to Stoic thought, value is not something granted from the outside. It is built from within, through actions, principles, and emotional self-mastery. A person doesn't need to be loved by anyone to prove they are worthy. True value does not come from being part of someone else's life, but from how one lives their own. A person of principle, who knows their limits, lives with purpose, and stands firm through adversity. That person carries value, whether recognized or not. Worth is not contingent on another's presence. It exists independently of external conditions and reactions. Stoicism emphasizes that the only thing truly ours is our thoughts and actions. No one can take your dignity unless you surrender it. When a relationship ends, if you continue to live by your values, without begging, without emotional outbursts, without losing yourself, you remain whole. But if you abandon your principles just to hold on to someone, you've traded the most precious part of yourself for a fleeting emotion. Someone with true value has no need to prove it. They do not chase, do not seek approval, and do not fear being misunderstood. They let their actions speak, and the right person, the one who shares their values and depth, will recognize this without explanation. That recognition comes not from surface impressions, but from resonance at the deepest level of thought. In relationships, what makes someone truly magnetic is not appearance, wealth, or status. It is steadiness. When someone shows they are not easily shaken by uncertainty, that they do not need others to feel complete, they emit a kind of energy that makes people pause and look again. And it is this energy, not words, not displays, that signals intrinsic worth. Needing no one does not mean isolation or emotional denial. It means that even in solitude, you remain yourself. You don't wait for someone to complete you. You are already progressing toward wholeness each day through your own choices. And when others see that, if they have depth and clarity, they will recognize your value. In the end, what matters is not whether others see your worth, but whether you continue to live by it, regardless of circumstance. Because when you stand your ground, whether people come or go, the one who is truly meant to walk beside you, if they exist, will find their way to you. No persuasion, no performance, just you walking your path, and they will know you when they see you. 8. Emotional self-mastery is the secret weapon of a true man. In every area of life, especially in romantic relationships, the ability to govern emotion is one of the defining traits of a man's character. It is not physical strength, social status, or extraordinary talent that makes a man dependable, but rather his ability to regulate his inner responses amid uncertainty and intense emotion. Stoicism grounds personal ethics in the distinction between what is within our control and what is not. Emotions, especially sudden ones like anger, jealousy, hurt, or the craving for approval, cannot always be entirely prevented. However, our response to those emotions always remains within our power. A true man is not one ruled by his emotions, but one who uses reason to guide them. When a relationship falters, the first instinct for many is to react immediately. They might say things they don't mean, do things they later regret, simply because they couldn't hold back the emotional flood. But a man with emotional self-mastery is different. He creates space between emotion and action. In that space, he asks, does this action serve my values? Will it lead to the outcome I truly want? Only when the answer is clear does he choose to respond, calmly, deliberately. This self-mastery is not only a sign of wisdom, it is a rare inner strength. While others lose composure and are ruled by emotion, the self-governed man holds firm. He's not drawn into needless arguments, not baited by provocation, and doesn't act to satisfy a fleeting ego. The ability to remain centered in emotional chaos is one of the highest forms of discipline a man can train. In relationships, especially with women, emotional mastery reveals itself in how one handles conflict. When the other is angry, distant, or hurtful, reacting from instinct usually makes things worse. A true man doesn't avoid emotion, but he doesn't let emotion dictate the quality of his actions. He chooses to act in line with principle, not in line with passing feeling. Emotional self-control is also the foundation of trust. A person whose attitude constantly shifts with their mood can never be a true source of stability for others. In contrast, the one who remains calm through both success and failure, in love and in pain, becomes a reliable anchor, not because he feels nothing, but because he doesn't let feelings run his life. Stoicism does not ask us to suppress emotion, but to understand it, accept its presence, and act beyond it. When you realize that a negative emotion will pass, if you don't fuel it with reckless behavior, you learn how to remain grounded in any situation. And that creates a rare kind of attraction, quiet, unforced, but deep and enduring. Therefore, in a world of chaos and volatile emotion, the man who commands his emotions has no need to prove his strength outwardly. His true weapon lies in his inner stability, his calm in the storm, and the harmony between his thoughts and actions. He stands out not by conquering others, but by mastering himself. 9. True love doesn't come from pursuit, but from resonance. In a society where the act of chasing love is often romanticized, many believe that relentless effort to win someone's heart is a sign of genuine affection. They chase, they text endlessly. They are willing to change themselves just to please the other. Yet from a Stoic perspective, true love is not the outcome of one-sided striving, but the meeting of two souls aligned in values, direction, and inner maturity. Pursuit often places one person in a lower position, leading them to act not from authenticity, but from a desire to be validated. In contrast, resonance occurs when two people meet at a point of balance, where neither has to trade their identity to be loved. When a relationship is built on resonance, both individuals maintain their personal value, and neither feels compelled to prove they are worthy. True love does not demand that anyone strain to keep the other's attention. It does not arise from constant pleasing, nor does it depend on a string of actions meant to impress. True love, in its deepest sense, is a state in which both people feel understood, respected, and accepted in their wholeness, without needing to embellish or conceal who they are. Stoicism emphasizes self-mastery, and this is especially vital in love. A person without inner stability is easily swept into a relationship marked by dependence. They seek security in another rather than building it within. In such cases, love becomes a need, not a connection. By contrast, when each person is self-possessed, they do not come together to fill a void, but to expand one another's inner space, forming a bond that is far more enduring. Resonance in love doesn't happen by accident. It emerges when both individuals have moved past the stage of emotional dependency and entered a mature state, where they can love without possessing, care without controlling, and be present without imposing. This kind of love creates no burden, because it is not born of need, but of the free choice to walk alongside one another in a meaningful life. Therefore, instead of pouring all your energy into chasing someone, wisdom lies in building a life that naturally draws the right person toward it. When you live in alignment with your values, the one who resonates with them will recognize it, without needing you to prove anything. And if no such person appears, you still haven't lost yourself. Because you don't love to become complete. You love because you already are. 10. A relationship is a test of character, not a battlefield for victory or defeat. Every relationship, romantic, familial, or friendly, is the truest mirror of one's character. When things go well, anyone can appear kind, patient, and gentle. But it is during conflict, when trust is strained or emotions run high, that one's true nature begins to surface. From the Stoic perspective, a relationship is not merely an emotional experience. It is a proving ground for one's virtues, self-mastery, and ethical consistency. Unlike the common mindset that treats relationships as places to determine who's right or wrong, who wins or loses is, Stoic philosophy does not encourage confrontation. In this view, the goal of a relationship is not to gain control or prove superiority, but to elevate awareness and understand oneself more deeply through interaction with others. If someone treats the relationship as a battlefield, they will always defend their ego, react defensively, or impose their will to win. But if they see it as a test of character, they will watch their own responses and view conflict as an opportunity for correction and growth. In moments of conflict, the natural human impulse is to blame, criticize, or withdraw. However, what defines character is not who speaks first or who stays silent longest, but how each person handles both their own emotions and those of the other. A person grounded in Stoicism does not react impulsively, nor do they avoid. They acknowledge the presence of emotion, but do not allow it to dictate their actions. Instead, they let reason guide them, remain aligned with personal principles, and place inner steadiness above any desire to win. In relationships, lasting connection is not built on being always right, but on remaining consistent in character. When things become difficult, anyone can present themselves well during the early stages, but it's only when trust is tested that we discover whether someone is truly trustworthy. The ability to stay calm when misunderstood, to remain patient when unseen, and to act respectfully even when disrespected. These are signs of character that has been deeply forged. Ultimately, what matters in a relationship is not leaving a strong impression, but leaving lasting respect. People may forget promises or specific arguments, but they will remember how you carried yourself during hard times, and that memory will shape how they see you, not as someone who won a moment, but as someone who possessed true inner strength. Therefore, every relationship is a chance to refine and reveal the self. It is not a place to display power, nor a stage for competition. It is the clearest arena in which character reveals itself, and the clearest mirror through which we come to see who we really are. Through each response, each choice, each word, and each action. 11. The most important journey isn't toward her, it's toward yourself. When a relationship ends or stands on the edge of collapse, most thoughts, emotions, and actions tend to spiral toward questions like, how do I get her back? How can I hold on? Or, what can I do to make her change? The mind quickly turns outward, focusing all its attention on the other person, on her reactions, on the hope that if you do enough of the right things, she might return. But from a Stoic perspective, the journey that truly matters doesn't begin with changing another. It begins with returning to yourself. Stoicism teaches that what lies beyond your control, including another's feelings, choices, or return, should never become the center of your actions. To place your focus on her is to surrender your agency. A person may spend weeks or months waiting for a message, a sign from someone who's gone, without realizing that during that time, they've abandoned themselves, neglected emotional healing, forgotten personal goals, and lost the rhythm of a disciplined life. The journey inward is the process of reclaiming your personal values, redefining happiness, and rebuilding inner strength after emotional upheaval. It unfolds quietly, without immediate recognition, yet it lays the foundation for any lasting recovery or growth. Instead of asking, "What is she thinking?" the Stoic asks, "Who am I becoming through this?" And from there begins the restructuring of life. Turning inward is not selfishness. It is responsibility. Responsibility for your own mind, emotions, health, and future. When the other person is no longer present, no longer part of the road ahead, the only thing you are left with is yourself. And how you choose to move forward will shape the entire trajectory of your life from that point on. In the loneliness that follows separation, people often search for escape outside themselves, but lasting peace never comes from another. It comes from within, from reestablishing personal principles, from nurturing core values, and from actively building a life of direction. Regardless of who stays or leaves, when someone truly returns to themselves, every future relationship, whether old or new, will no longer arise from the need to be completed. It will come from a place of fullness, where love is not a requirement for wholeness, but a natural expression of a life already rooted in order and depth. So instead of directing your energy toward her, toward the question, "Does she still love me?" the essential direction is inward, asking, "Am I living in alignment with myself? And am I building a life I can be proud of, regardless of who chooses to stay or walk away?" And it is the answer to those questions that will determine not only your future relationships, but the very quality of the life you are living. There was something I once believed, mistakenly, that if someone walked away, the right response was to try harder, to message more, to prove I was still worthy of love. But I came to realize, the more I reached outward, the more disconnected I became from within. The truth is, no one can fill the emptiness inside if you're still hollow yourself. Since practicing the principles of Stoicism, I've learned to be intentionally silent, not to manipulate, but to listen inwardly. Every morning, I start by writing down 3 questions. What am I feeling? Am I acting out of emotion? And is this within my control? Just 3 questions, but they keep me grounded all day. I also began rebuilding the smallest things, reading instead of checking messages, working out instead of scrolling through social media, waiting for a sign from someone. Over time, I noticed I was no longer being driven by emotion the way I used to. And most importantly, I no longer needed anyone else to affirm my worth. If you're on a path of healing, don't begin by searching for someone else. Begin by rebuilding yourself. True love, both from others and from within, comes only when you're ready to receive it from a place of steadiness, no longer dependent. And that's when you are truly free. If this video has stirred something within you, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss future content. What you're looking for isn't out there. It's in how you see yourself after each moment of heartbreak. Because in the end, the person you need to conquer isn't her. It's the person you have the power to become. And that will always be the most beautiful victory. See you in the next video.